Further debate? Further debate? I recognize the member from Guelph.
Thank you, Speaker. It's an honor to rise today to speak to Bill 170, the Keeping People Housed Act, and I want to congratulate the member from Kitchener Centre for bringing forward this bill, the member's first private member's bill. And I can tell you, Speaker, I had the honor of knocking on a lot of doors with the member from Kitchener Centre in the last year. And over again, her constituents told her that the housing crisis was their number one priority, and that they wanted an independent voice who was going to come to Queen's Park and bring their concerns and their real lived experience of struggling with finding an affordable place to rent and to own. And so I want to thank the member for honoring those constituents by bringing forward Bill 170. And I want to say to my colleague from Perth Wellington that not only do we need more housing supply, and I'm going to get to that in a second, but we need housing supply that people can afford. People in our communities are struggling. The affordability crisis that we talk about in this House every day is primarily being driven by the housing crisis. And so no matter how often the government wants to distract with that by talking about bags at the LCBO, the bottom line is that it takes somebody to work 2 full-time jobs on a minimum wage to be able to afford rent in the city of Toronto. There is no major city in this province, mid-size, large size, small size, where a minimum wage worker can actually afford to rent a one-bedroom apartment. And I can tell you, when I became an MPP, one of the first things I started dealing with were these things called in 11, in 12, in 13s. People coming to my office being pressured to sign legal documents, to be forced out of the affordable apartment they were living in at a time when the vacancy rate in my community is almost zero, where the average one-bedroom apartment is $2,200. Can you imagine being somebody on ODSP trying to survive on $1,300 a month, being pressured to leave the home that you can afford to pay rent in, knowing you're going to go into a rental market where you would have to earn double what you do on ODSP just to afford rent, let alone anything else you need. So what do we need to do to increase supply? Well, we need the government to actually say yes to things like fourplexes and 4-story. We need them to say yes to legalizing 6 to 11-story apartment buildings along major transportation corridors, which is in the bill I put forward, but the government seems to be saying no to that. And when they say yes to it, especially those 6 to 11-story apartment buildings, they need to have rent control so that the people in those buildings know they're going to be protected. They need to have vacancy control so when somebody leaves, that it remains protected. And we need to have stronger provisions for renovictions. I mean, the fact that in the first mandate, this government's first 4 years in office, and I know some of the members opposite weren't there at that time, but during that time, the number of in-13s in the province of Ontario during their first mandate increased 300%. 20,541 people being renovicted out of the home they could afford. And I can tell you, it's personal story, Speaker. I had a woman come to my office, a single mom on disability, in an accessible apartment on the first floor of her apartment unit. And she was first asked to sign an N11, and she refused, which is her legal right. Luckily, we were able to refer to the legal aid clinic so she could get some legal advice and support. But then an N13 was hammered on her, and she was renovicted. A mom with a kid, a disability. She has no place where she can find an affordable home in Guelph or in most any other community she would live in. So I think it's reasonable. It's reasonable to have a bill like this bill to just put some guidelines in, some common sense guidelines to protect people, to tell people that this province cares about them, that we care about renters and they have an affordable place to live. That's why I'll be voting in favor of this bill.
Thank you.